Most people who visit New York City think the highest point in the city must be somewhere among the skyscrapers of Manhattan. But the real answer hides in a quiet tree-covered hill on Staten Island. A place filled with secrets, forgotten stories, and surprising history. This place is called Todt Hill. At first glance, Todt Hill looks peaceful. Beautiful homes, winding roads, thick forests, and views stretching far across New York Harbor. But beneath this calm landscape lies a past that very few people talk about. A past of early settlers, mysterious land names, hidden forests, and even stories connected to organized crime. Todt Hill is actually the highest natural point in all of New York City, rising about 410 feet above sea level. That may not sound like much compared to skyscrapers, but for a natural hill in a city built mostly on flat land, it's extraordinary. On clear days, the views from the area stretch for miles, across Staten Island, New Jersey, and even parts of Brooklyn. What many people don't realize is that the name Todt itself has a very unusual origin. The word comes from an old Dutch word, Todt, meaning death. Yes, the highest hill in New York City literally carries a name that once meant death. This name dates back to the 1600s, when Dutch settlers were among the first Europeans to explore and settle parts of Staten Island. Back then, Staten Island looked nothing like the suburban neighborhoods we see today. It was covered in thick forests, wetlands, and hills that made travel difficult. Todt Hill stood tall above the rest of the island, acting almost like a natural landmark for early settlers and travelers. But the hill was not just a scenic viewpoint. During the colonial period and even into the 1800s, parts of the hill were used for farming and small settlements. Life here was isolated and challenging. Families relied on the land, growing crops and raising animals while the forests around them remained wild and untamed. One of the most fascinating and lesser-known parts of Todt Hill's story is its connection to the Staten Island Greenbelt. This massive network of protected forests surrounds parts of Todt Hill and is one of the largest natural areas in New York City. While millions of people live just miles away, these woods remain home to deer, foxes, hawks, and many other animals. Imagine walking through these quiet forests today and realizing that centuries ago, Native Americans once traveled through these same hills long before European settlers arrived. Archaeological findings suggest that the Lenape people used parts of Staten Island for hunting and seasonal camps, taking advantage of the island's natural resources. But Todt Hill's history doesn't stop with early settlers and forests. In the 20th century, the hill quietly became one of the most exclusive and mysterious neighborhoods in New York City. Wealthy residents were drawn to the privacy, the elevation, and the stunning views. Because the area sits so high above the surrounding city, it feels almost like a hidden world separated from the noise and chaos of New York. Yet with wealth and privacy sometimes come darker stories. For many years, rumors and reports connected parts of Todt Hill to organized crime figures who preferred quiet neighborhoods far away from public attention. Some of these homes were believed to belong to powerful individuals who wanted distance from Manhattan while still staying close enough to the city. Whether every rumor is true or not, the hill became known as a place where influence and secrecy often met. One particularly interesting historical moment happened in the mid-1900s, when development threatened large portions of Staten Island's forests. Many natural areas were being cleared for housing and roads. But something unexpected happened. Local residents and environmental activists began fighting to protect the forests surrounding Todt Hill. Their efforts eventually helped create what we now know as the Staten Island Greenbelt. Because of these efforts, thousands of acres of forest remain preserved today. Without those people speaking up decades ago, Todt Hill might have looked very different today, covered in buildings instead of trees. And this brings us to another surprising fact many people don't know. Even though New York City is one of the most urban places on Earth, Todt Hill still contains some of the city's most untouched nature. Hiking trails weave through dense woods where sunlight filters through tall trees, and the sounds of traffic fade away. Some visitors say that walking through these trails almost feels like leaving New York entirely. But perhaps one of the most fascinating things about Todt Hill is how it quietly watches over the entire city. For centuries, it has seen everything. The arrival of early settlers, the growth of New York Harbor, the construction of bridges and skyscrapers, waves of immigration, and the transformation of Staten Island from farmland into neighborhoods and communities. Yet despite all of these changes, Todt Hill remains largely hidden from the spotlight. Tourists visiting New York rarely hear about it. Even many longtime residents of the city have never heard its name. And maybe that's part of what makes Todt Hill so special. In a city famous for bright lights, busy streets, and towering buildings, this quiet hill reminds us that history doesn't always live in the most obvious places. Sometimes it lives in forests, in old roads, in names passed down for centuries, and in landscapes that quietly survive while the world around them changes. So the next time someone asks where the highest point in New York City is, the answer isn't on top of a skyscraper. It's on a quiet hill on Staten Island. A place called Todt Hill, where nature, history, mystery, and time all meet. And the most fascinating part? Even today, many of its stories are still waiting to be discovered.